Welcome back. So now we're going to move to talk about types of strategy. And by now we have discussed everything right from the beginning, introducing strategy. We talked about ecosystems. We also talked about levels of strategies. And now we are going to discuss what we call types of strategy. So once we understood that strategy operates at different levels within the organization, which is what we dealt with when we're dealing or when we spoke about levels of strategy. The next issue is obviously how strategy is actually developed in practice. That's what the next thing is about. So organizations do not all think or behave in the same way when it comes to strategy. Some are highly structured and analytical, while others are more intuitive and adaptive. Over time, several broad approaches to strategy actually developed, and now we have quite a number of strategies that can be implemented by companies, and we're going to discuss this. So I think we've got quite a number of several, of strategy development that has been identified, and each are reflecting different assumptions about how organizations operate and how predictable the future really is. Now, there is no single approach that can be described as universally correct in terms of strategy development. The appropriateness of any approach really depends on the nature of the organization, the industry it operates in, the experience of its management, and the degree of uncertainty in its environment. Now, what is important is that we understand these approaches clearly because they explain why organizations behave as they do and why strategies succeed or fail under different conditions. So, the first strategy or type of strategy that I'm going to discuss is what we call the rational model. Now, the rational model represents one of the most traditional and widely recognized approaches to strategy development. It assumes that strategy can be designed through a logical, structured, and sequential process. So, under this model, organizations believe that careful analysis combined with deliberate planning can lead to optimal strategic choices. Now, as you can see on the diagram there, so the rational model begins with clarity of purpose. The organization must decide what it is trying to achieve. This usually takes the form of a mission or an overarching aim or objectives that the company should obviously state. Now, and this assets the overall direction for the organization. So that's the mission and its objectives. So at least this will put it on the clear that this is where we want to go and this is how we expect to get there. Now, but however, a mission on its own, or a mission statement, if I want to put it that way, on its own is not enough. It must be translated into specific objectives that can be measured and assessed over time. So these objectives provide a reference point against which success or failure can be judged for whatever organization we are dealing with. Now, so you can see that on our diagram there, where we have got mission and objectives, which is the first thing that the company will obviously set. But definitely, because we discussed the ecosystem before this, it will have to set these objectives and mission in an ecosystem or in an environment in which it operates. So this environment is both internal environment and external environment. Internally, in terms of its divisions, its employees, its operations and stuff like that, and then externally in terms of its customers or regulators, government, banks, and competitors, and all those things. So these are the things that obviously the area, I mean, the environment in which this organization or the organization operates in. But now it needs to still have a goal and a long-term objective and a mission and things like that. So, so once objectives have been established, um, and we've got the mission in place, the organization undertakes a detailed appraisal of its current position. And this is very important because we need to identify where we are at the moment. So this involves obviously examining internal factors such as resources that we currently have, the capabilities that we have, maybe the cost structures that we have, the systems that we have at our disposal, the culture that we currently have in our organization, alongside external factors such as obviously the market conditions in our industry, the competitors that we have, the customer behavior and preferences and things like that, the technological changes and improvements that are happening in our industry, and obviously the regulations and changing policies and things like that. Now, the aim of doing this is to develop a clear understanding of where the organization currently stands and why it is in that position. Because only when we understand where we are can we move into the future and can plan how we get to the future or the desired outcome that we want. Now, as part of this stakeholder analysis is also very important, usually together with the appraisal and position analysis. Uh, Different stakeholders have different expectations, and these expectations influence what strategies are feasible and what strategies are acceptable. Now, for example, shareholders may demand higher returns, while employees may value job security. Regulators, on the other hand, may be imposing some new fines, some constraints, some new policies, and things like that. While customers may also exert pressure through their purchasing choices and changes in their preferences, and they want their needs to be satisfied. And then this means that strategy must navigate these competing demands of our stakeholders and try to balance and to meet these. So based on this analysis that we do on position analysis and appraisal, the organization then needs to generate strategic options, as in which options then can we use to get to where we want. These options obviously represent alternative ways of achieving the organization's objectives, the mission, and stuff like that. So some may involve maybe organic growth to get where we want. Others may think of consolidations or mergers or acquisitions. Some may require maybe significant investment and obviously capital injection and things like that, while others may focus on cost reduction to gain more customer base and stuff like that, or maybe some will think of restructuring and things like that. Now, at this stage, creativity is very important when you're dealing with strategic options there. But it must be grounded in the realities identified during the position analysis and appraisal. So now the next step after strategic options is obviously to evaluate those options and to make a choice. Now, strategic options are assessed against criteria such as the suitability of the option. So we are looking at all these options that we have, and then we are going to choose the best one. But how do we get there? We're going to look at how suitable is this option, how feasible is this option, and how acceptable Suitability considers whether the option fits within the organization's environment and objectives, and even the organization's business model. And on the other hand, feasibility will examine whether the organization has the resources and capabilities to implement the option. Do we have enough resources? And resources are not only finances. We can talk about human resources. We can talk about natural resources. We can talk about so many. We've got the six aspects of resources that we can talk about, and we need to be able to ensure that the company has all the resources that are needed. The human capital and stuff, that's the most important resource. So that's what feasibility looks at, whether we have got enough resources and whether we have got the capabilities or maybe the skills and stuff like that to implement this whatever option that we are looking at. Now, acceptability also on the other hand considers how stakeholders are likely to respond. So this stage really, I'm talking about the evaluation and choice, really requires some aspect of serious judgment, because trade-offs are inevitable at this stage. And I think perfect solutions do not exist or rarely exist. So we're going to have to obviously have some trade-offs and some things to obviously overlook and stuff like that. So once a strategy has been chosen, we have evaluated and we have made a choice upon, considering all those options that we had looked at, then we are going to look at implementation. This is the most important aspect of the rational model, because implementation is the most difficult of all. We can plan, we can strategize, we can put policies, we can define things, but to implement them is the task. Now, this is where strategic intent must be translated into action. Resources are allocated, structures are adjusted, systems are redesigned, and people are mobilized and things like that. Now, even the most carefully designed strategy can fail at this stage, especially if execution is poor or communication is very weak and informal and stuff like that, or there is resistance, and that resistance has been underestimated or was not really researched to find how much resistance can we feel. Because if employees are going to resist, then it means nothing can be done. Now, after implementation, we will have the final one, which is where the organization reviews and controls performance. Because once we have everything in motion, then each and every other stage we need to review and see if everything is working well, and we also need to obviously control performance and to ensure whether it remains intact or it is improved or things like that. So actual outcomes are compared with the objectives that were previously set on the mission and objectives, and corrective action is taken where necessary. Now, if objectives are not being met, the organization must decide whether the strategy itself is flawed, whether implementation has failed, or whether external conditions have changed. Now, the rational model offers several advantages. And the advantages that come with a rational model really are quite several, but I think one of the most important is that it forces managers to look ahead and to plan ahead rather than focusing solely on immediate problems alone. So it has this long-term focus, and not only focus on meeting short-term obligations and short-term duties, and meeting and dealing with the consequences that are short-term and stuff like that. So it encourages systematic analysis and risk identification, because for you to get to a desired outcome, especially if it's 5-10 years, you need also to map out the risks that you are going to face and how you're going to deal with them, how you're going to mitigate them, and even some of the risks that may arise as you continue. So it promotes and encourages systematic analysis and obviously risk identification. And when you identify risks, it also encourages dealing with those risks. It also promotes a coordination and goal congruence, because at least we have got one goal or got these goals at the top corporate level, and that are broken down into business level strategies that are broken down into functional level. So everyone is working towards this one goal to meet these main objectives that the company has set. So uh, that's how it is. It actually encourages goal congruence across the whole organization. But on the other hand, it also has a significant weaknesses. This model, because forecasting is inherently uncertain. Because for you to obviously look and plan and put strategies that covers 10, 15 years, you definitely have to also have some cost structures, some budgets and planning, and forecasting is becomes the main central thing for you to be able to project for 10 years or 15 years. So especially it becomes inherently uncertain, especially in the fast moving industries. Imagine planning for maybe 10 years when things are changing almost on a monthly basis nowadays. If you had planned in 2020 for the next 10 years to 2030, you would have maybe not included and thought of the impact that maybe AI will come to have, and remember whether it is or what amount of impact it may have even for the years to up until get to 2030, or whatever other things that have been impacted by the AI, enter the new systems that are there, maybe also the automations that have come because of AI. Let's say in an accounting firm, you would not have maybe thought of that. So it means you'd have to now redo and readjust your budgets and maybe over an overhaul of doing everything, because something might have come which seriously disrupts how you were doing or how you had planned. So that's one of the problems. So especially in fast moving industries where changes can happen at any moment. Now, because analysis is always incomplete due to what we call bounded rationality. So formal plans can become rigid. If you have got a plan that is covered in 10 years, and it's going to drive everyone to obviously follow and maybe and focus on achieving, and maybe forget other things that may be happening in the industry that could actually maybe change the way the company operates. But now, because we've got these goals that have been set in motion, everyone has to now work, try to follow this. So it becomes rigid. It actually discourages initiative and adaptation. Now, the process can also be very costly and time consuming. Imagine the budgets, the forecasting and stuff. It means it may end up consuming management attention, um, maybe without guaranteeing success really, because at the end of the day we may still fail. So those are some of the problems, and in your textbook or study text there it's covered quite extensively, and you can have more examples from there. But this is what we call the rational model. So the next model here is what we call the emergent approach by Mintzberg. So in practice, strategy does not unfold in a linear process like what the rational model tries to assume. It is not unfolding in a neat linear manner assumed by the rational model or the rational model of strategy, because you cannot be planning and then after that you do the options, and after that you do whatever position analysis, and after that you do implementation. Things are happening fast and happening at the same time. Competitors are doing this, employees are demanding this, shareholders are demanding this, and these all things are happening at the same time. It means decision, implementation, appraisal should be happening almost all at once. There's no a linear process of doing things. That was an old way, or it may happen in certain industries. It is not very true for almost every other industry, especially in the digital era. So this observation definitely led to the development of the emergent approach to strategy. And I like this one much because so it was done by Henry Mintzberg. So the emergent approach recognizes that strategies frequently develop over time as organizations respond to unexpected events that are happening almost every day, every time as they are running their businesses. So they are learning from experiences and adapt to change. So obviously, this is more a reality here, where it's like you're leading life, you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, but you are dealing with whatever is coming on a daily basis. And when it happens, that's when you deal with it, and or maybe when you can see that by tomorrow something can happen, and you can deal with it. So it is as things are happening, you are also planning and strategizing. So it means you can quickly change your plan. It doesn't mean that it doesn't look at the long term, but it focuses on the long term with the short term in mind, and with dealing with what is happening and what is coming in mind. So this approach actually recognizes that strategies are developed over time, like I said, and we are developing this in uncertain times, with uncertainty in mind, and when events are happening unexpectedly, and we are learning from them, and we also plan for the next one after learning from the previous one, things like that. So strategy is not fully specified in advance, like in a rational model where we have got a whole strategy for 10 years or something like that. Instead, it involves, it evolves as decisions are made and actions are being taken. Patterns of behavior will emerge, and these patterns, rather than formal plans, come to define the organization's strategy. So we are going to look at how have we dealt with all these things that we've met over the past 5 years. So the most prevalent strategy that we have used over these 5 years becomes more like our defined strategy, in other words. So analysis, choice, and implementation become intertwined rather than a sequence or a sequential process. No, which is more like a rational model. Now, this approach is particularly relevant in environments characterized by rapid change, for example, in tech industries, or maybe tech industries like Apple, computers, manufacturing, phone manufacturing companies, and stuff like that, where things are happening and things are changing fast. So these are environments that are characterized by rapid change, by uncertainty, and by innovation, serious innovation that is fast-paced. Now, in such contexts, detailed long-term planning may quickly become obsolete, because you plan for 10 years, but then there's going to be AI that comes, and your phone now needs to have adaptability to this AI and stuff like that, or your computer and stuff. It means whatever that you are producing that is not adaptive to what the current technology is there, or that is there, it means people won't buy it, they're no longer interested. They want the new thing, and the preferences have already changed. That's why you see some companies like Nokia and stuff end up failing at some point, because they were not catching up and anticipating the market and develop accordingly. So the ability to learn, to adapt, and respond may be more valuable here than the ability to predict. You need to be able to quickly adapt, to quickly change, and stuff like that. Now, a key requirement for successful emergent strategies or strategy is a culture that encourages experimentation. So, as an organization, you need to be able to encourage your employees to experiment, to try, to find solutions and stuff like that, and encourage learning. Now, managers must be willing to try new approaches, and maybe observe new outcomes and adjust accordingly. Now, failure is not necessarily a sign of incompetence under this strategy, but a source of insight, because whatever thing that you do and fail, you have learned a lot from that process. When you do again, you are most likely to succeed. However, this approach also carries its own risks, just like any other. without some sense of direction in this kind of strategy, organizations may end up drifting and no longer knowing what their purpose is, stuff like that. Because short-term reactions may undermine long-term coherence. So that's where you may find that the rational model may be beneficial in this regard. So yes, it may undermine long-term coherence, and decision-making may become overly dependent on individual judgment because we don't have an actual long-term strategy that can maybe guide everyone, but it's going to be mostly dependent on maybe the top executives and a few individuals. So it is important to note that emergent strategies or strategy does not imply the absence of planning. That's why I said it at the beginning that planning is still there, but we have got some industries or environments where you need to operate at an emergent strategy because imagine the tech industry, IT industry stuff. You can't be rigid and just stick to a 10-year plan alone. So organizations may still have their formal plans, but these plans are treated as flexible guides rather than fixed commitments. Not we don't want them to be rigid and to not be flexible. So we can just have a plan for 10 years, but we are quickly to change if we see something new and adjust and obviously adapt and change and stuff like that. So the organization must be willing to revise its strategy now and then in response to new information. Now, the other approach, um, really is what we call logical incrementalism. So logical incrementalism represents a middle ground between what we just discussed, the rational model and the emergent approach. So it's like the other one is this side, the other one is that side, and then we've got the logical incrementalism in the middle. Now, under this approach, strategy develops through a series of small deliberate steps rather than through a radical change or purely reactive behavior. So we are saying we have a rational model, which we are saying it follows a certain process. And we have got long-term plans and stuff with a plan in motion, everyone is following this. And then with the emergent approach, which is on the far right or on the other side, where we have to make decisions as they evolve and as things are coming and events are unfolding, we make decisions. So there's no like a formal plan we are following. Yeah, we can just have a plan, but the decision is really based on what's happening in the immediate and what's happening because the industry is ever changing. It's fast-paced industry and stuff like that. So you have two completely opposite strategies. Now we have got the logical incrementalism that says, yeah, we're gonna have to look at this whole thing, but we're gonna implement it step by step towards our goal. That's what the logical says. So, like I said, strategy is developed through a series of some small deliberate steps rather than through a total radical change of saying we're not going to follow a full detailed plan. So managers build on what has worked in the past, but making adjustments as circumstances are actually evolving and stuff like that. So this approach reflects the reality that managers face, like for example, time constraints, limited information, and political pressures and stuff like that. Rather than attempting to evaluate all possible options, they just focus on a limited set of feasible alternatives or choices. So change is introduced gradually, allowing stakeholders to adapt and to reduce the resistance. Now, so logical incrementalism has some several advantages. And some of these involve that it is often more acceptable to stakeholders because at least it is not too risky. So it avoids some sudden disruption into our strategy and into our objectives and stuff like that. It allows learning to take place over time, and it reduces the risk of what can I say? Risk associated with major strategic shifts. Because shifting your strategy definitely will have some ripple effects throughout the organization. So it at least avoids that because we are implementing step by step. So rather than just taking in this emergent approach from rational, which can cause some other risks and stuff like that, we take step by step and we can move towards whatever strategy that we may want. So, so I think, yeah, those are some of the importance or the benefits. But on the other side, the negatives also, it also has um, its own drawbacks, definitely. So, in environments where fundamental change is required, incremental adjustments may be insufficient or may be too slow. So, for example, in an environment that is seriously disrupted or is seriously prone to technical changes, this also may not work just like rational model. It may need a straight emergent strategy where you change strategy totally. And I think there have been examples of such where some companies were offering a certain service and totally changed and offered another service totally. I can give an example of a company where they changed a certain maybe product and totally changed and diverted to another. So, for example, there's a common story about the company that produces Viagra, and that Viagra was really not what we call sex pills or sex what we call um, what's the right word, stimulating maybe pills. They were actually trying to create a certain drug. I think, yeah, I think maybe for cancer or something. I'm not sure. I don't remember the actual thing. But then it failed the tests, those trials that they do, and it could not actually treat what they were intending to treat, like for example cancer and stuff like that. But when they were doing those trials, all the people and all the patients that were given that treatment as part of the trials reported one thing, that they had their libido higher, and they wanted to have maybe intercourse, and through that they would last longer and stuff like that. So almost everyone, especially the men, that they have such things. Now, they could have just said it has failed with regards to what they wanted to achieve, which is treating cancer. But then they understood that, oh, okay, something has happened. This thing seems to increase sex appeal, or it seems to help men to wanna to have longer sex periods or whatever. So they end up diverting totally and start advertising it as a sex appeal pill and stuff like that, and it became a well-known product to most men and stuff like that. That's a total change. It means you cannot be sticking to your long-term goal. If your long-term goal was to have a cancer pill, they were going to go back, put this whole thing down, and ban all those pills, and maybe start again to continue and get another cancer pill that could pass. But they totally left and went the other side, which is an emergent strategy. It worked there, and they decided to continue with this product, but with whatever the results were showing, and it proved to be working for them. The company is still there. Those people who use those things know that the company is there. So that's what we call an emergent approach or an emergent strategy. It simply means a total overhaul. So in such a circumstances, logical incrementalism will not work, because there is no time to do some deliberate and small changes. It needs a clear, straight decision, and every resources is put to that decision. Otherwise, if you delay, you're gonna fail. The resources are not there. Maybe the funders who were funding this particular thing were no longer willing because this thing has failed. But I'm sure they are happy wherever they are because it still became a success in terms of the new found benefits that the people showed to patients. Now, so that's a, I think that's a good example there. Now, the next thing is freewheeling opportunism. Now, freewheeling opportunism is also at the opposite end of the spectrum, um, unlike the ones that we also discussed. So this approach rejects formal planning almost entirely, totally. Because remember, even though we're talking about emergent approaches, we still say planning is still important. We can still have a plan, but you can still be able to adjust and reflect and be flexible and adapt. But freewheeling opportunism almost entirely disregard planning, arguing that planning is too slow and constraining in fast-changing environments, which was what we just said. So it can still apply here. So instead, organizations take advantage of opportunities as they arise, more like your emergent strategy, but it is on steroid. This one, so it actually pushes on relying on experience and the intuition of managers that are at the top. Now, this approach can work in highly dynamic industries where opportunities emerge quickly and unpredictably. And if you want to put it again, even on the example that I just gave, that could still fit an actual freewheeling opportunism, because it simply means a serious shift from what you had in mind and following a totally different perspective. That's what Viagra did. So this approach definitely works in industries where opportunities, I think, like I said, emerge quickly, and the environment is very unpredictable. And it may also suit organizations led by highly skilled and experienced managers, where you can say, no, whatever this guy or this manager is saying, better we follow. I think you can see with how Elon Musk maybe runs his companies, and he is the one that is carried as the main genius, whatever decision that is making, people start following because they think, and it has been proven that he is mostly right. If we look at how he has run his companies and how he's benefited his shareholders and stuff like that. So, but we also still have some risks of this what you call freewheeling opportunism, because without formal planning, organizations may fail to still to identify their key risks. Because at least formal planning helps you to at least map your risks, identify them, and maybe deal with them even before they arise. But with this kind of, you are just seeing and making decisions as they come, and some risks may come when you are not ready at all, and they may be big, they may cause disruptions that may result in your company closing. Now, so obviously, companies can struggle to secure also external finance, because banking system usually favors a formal plan and a forecast and some financial statements and stuff. All these things happen because we've got a plan and we've got a forecast and we've got some budgets that we can put together and say this is how much we think we're gonna make or we're gonna get or what. But with this kind of strategy, it's difficult for you to get funding in our system. So definitely it will cause companies to struggle to secure finance. It also has a lack of coherence in the ways the top leaders may do their work. Because remember, we are depending on their experience and stuff, and one may say this and one may say that, and it may cause some conflicts and stuff and confusion. Now, success under this approach depends heavily on managerial capability, and obviously mistakes that can be done there can be costly. if there's any. So I'm happy that we have dealt with all the types of strategies, and I'm sure that you have understood um, what a rational model is, what logical incrementalism is, what emergent approach is, and what freewheeling opportunism is. So now let's see each other in the next episode where we talk about approach to strategy, or approach of strategy, or strategic approach, however you wanna put it.